Okay, now we're going to talk about factoring quadratics. So this is when we have a quadratic term. Quadratic is when you have an x squared term, or in this case, b squared, n squared. And quadratics, when you graph them, have the shape of this, or if there's a negative sign in front, the general shape would look like this. Sometimes they're wider, sometimes they're really narrow, but what they all have in common is they have a low point called the vertex, and that's also called a minima, or a high point, which is called a maxima or a maximum, depending on which class you're taking. Okay, well, there are factoring techniques. One technique is the box method, and go ahead and look on YouTube for box method. I might do a video on box method. Some people find that easier. I've had a few students that find that easier. I'm going to show you, it's kind of an old school method. I still think that this is the easiest method. So remember, this invisible value here is the A, that invisible 1. This invisible 1 is the B value. This is the C value. Every quadratic, if you have it in standard form, you'll have an A, B, and C. Well, how you factor a quadratic is you're going to take factors of C, so that means they multiply, but that they add up to the B value. So in this case, the B value is 1. So I'm going to put 1 there a couple of times. Well, if we've got -2, factors of -2, that's the C value, are either going to be -2, +1, or +2, -1. Well, then you look straight across. This is the adding part. Well, -2 plus 1 is -1, so that doesn't work. That means these are your two factors. So when you put your two parentheses, make sure the parentheses are touching right there. Touching means multiply. If you write the factors like that, that implies that you are trying to add or subtract. So make sure that the parentheses touch, and then you take the variable. So here's the cool part. These factors go to the left of each set of parentheses. So n times n is n squared. And then factors of C go on the right side. And we already found those factors. So +2 goes in one, -1 goes in the other. Ta-da! And that's how you'd factor. Let's look at another one. So now we have factors of C that are going to add up to +8. I'm going to put this a few times. Now, you won't eventually have to do that. You'll be able to just look at it. Some of you won't even need the table. But if this is -9, we could have -3 and +3. Well, that adds up to 0, so that doesn't work. You could have -9, +1. That adds up to -8. +9, -1. These add up to 8. So then you're going to put your two sets of parentheses. Factors of b squared. So b times b. And then these factors of -9. So what do we say? We said 1 will be +9 and 1 will be -1. Now this order doesn't matter. So some of you might have had a tendency to write it like this. Both ways are correct. That order doesn't matter. As long as this is +9, this is -1, which set those go into does not matter. Make sure the parentheses are touching. All right, now we have a new case. Well, if you'll notice, look at the coefficients or the constant. All of these have a 5 in common. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to do the reverse distributive. By the way, that's called factoring. So remember how the distributive, you would multiply all 3 terms and you'd have your answer? Well, when you do the reverse, you're going to factor out the number that all 3 things have in common. So we're going to factor out a 5. So 5 divide 5, that would cancel, leaving x squared. Negative 40x divide 5, that would leave negative 8x. Positive 60 divide 5 would leave positive 12. Okay, now you would do factors of c. There's your invisible a, your b, your c. Factors of c that are going to add up to negative 8. So I'll put negative 8 a few times. If c is positive, then these answers are both either going to be positive or they're both going to be negative. And since they have to add up to negative 8, we can not even worry about trying any of the positive ones. All of the factors will be negative. And you're probably looking, by the time I've done this, you've probably already said, oh, well, negative 6 times negative 2 add up, multiply to be positive 12, and these two add up to be negative 8. And you'd be correct. Now, you could have tried negative 12, negative 1. Nope, that's negative 13. Negative 4, negative 3. Nope, that's negative. And I guess that's it. But, so the 5 would stay. Then you'd put your 2 sets of parentheses. And remember, the factors of x squared go to the left of each parentheses. And then our factors right here, and that order doesn't matter. You could put negative x subtract 2, x subtract 6, or x subtract 6, x subtract 2 like I did. Okay, that one's similar. You would check with the calculator to see if 6 goes into each of those evenly. And if they do, then you factor out the 6. 6 divides 6, that would leave n squared. 24 divides 6, that would leave 4n. Let's see. 6 goes into 27 4 times with 3 left over. There we go. So we'd have negative 45 there. Then we would do factors of negative 45 that add up to positive 4. Well, probably the easiest one we're thinking about is 9 and 5. But since this is negative, one of these have to be negative. But look, this has to add up to positive 4. So I'm going to put the negative 5 there, the positive 9 there. So our n squared factors go to the left of each parentheses, and our negative 45 factors go to the right of each parentheses. So we would have n plus 9, n subtract 5. Okay, it's going to get a little bit harder. This is when it gets much harder. Or a little bit harder, because you have to keep track of more things. Again, I may do a box video, but if not, on YouTube or other places, look for the box method of factoring. And if you're not understanding this, look for a different method of factoring quadratics. So notice this 7 does not go into 75, nor does it go into 50 evenly. All right. So we know if it factors, sometimes they don't always factor. If it doesn't factor, then you have to use the quadratic formula, because it's called a prime trinomial if it doesn't factor. Okay, so first thing you're going to do, and since 7 only has factors of 7 and 1, we'd put 7 in one parentheses. I always do the larger one to the left. All right. We're still going to put factors of 50, but here's the catch. So let's go ahead, and everything's positive. So let's still do factors of 50. And we can't think about the 75 on this one. I'll show you what I mean. So we have 50 times 1, 25 times 2, 10 times 5. Now they have to add up to 75, but it's not going to be added up to 75 here. This is the extra piece. You're going to take the two outer ones. You're going to multiply the two outer. So 7n times the outer, and you're going to get a product. Then you're going to multiply the two inside ones. So n times, this is the inside one. These things have to add up to 75. Well, in this case, 75n. Well, look at 7n times 10. If I put 10 here, that gives me 70n. 10 times 5, that means a 5 would go there. So n times 5, that gives me 5n. Look at that. Those two add up to 75n. So let's do another one of those. 7 does not go into 60. I don't think it goes into, no, because it goes into 77. So 7x times x goes there. Factors of positive 60. Now here, remember, here's the tricky part. If this is positive 60, but they have to, everything has to add up to negative, then right away we know we're going to take those negative factors. So that's what we're going to do. So negative 60, negative 1. Negative 20 times negative 3. Oh, I left negative 30 times negative 2. Negative 15 times negative 4. Negative 12 times negative 5. And again, you don't have to do it this many times. Let me think if I got all of them. Yeah, 6. Yeah, 8 and 7. Okay, I think I got them all. But it's 7. So it's 7 times this. And then it's x times this. Those two have to add up to negative 76x. So let me see. It's not going to be, times 6 would be 42, and then 10 would be 52. 7 times 5 is 35 plus 12. It won't be that. 28 and 15 now. Let me start up here. Let me look at 20. Oh, maybe I looked at these a different way. Oh, I'm sorry. I was thinking they had to add up to negative 60. They have to add up to negative 76. So this is where we would start. It would be 7 times negative 10. That would give us negative 70. Negative 70x. And then x times negative 6 would give us negative 6x. And they add up to negative 76. Sorry about that I reversed those. Okay. Let's try another one. This one gets one step trickier because factors of 9r squared could be 9r and r, or it could be 3r and 3r. So you kind of have to have both. Everything's positive, so we can go ahead and put plus signs. And here's our factors of 9r squared. Factors of 8 are going to go there. Since that has to add up to 27, I'm going to guess, so it's 8 and 1, or 4 and 2. Let's try down here. Because up here, if we put 1 here and 8 there, that would be 9r and 8r. So that doesn't work. If we put the 8 there and the 1 there, that would be 72r. So this top one does not work. So let's do 3r and 3r. So if we do 8r, 8 there, so 3r times 8 gives us 24r, and then 8 times 1, and then 3r times 1 is 3r. They add up to 27r. So this right here is how you would factor 9r squared. Oops, those need to touch. Plus 27r plus 8. Okay, the next video will be on solving by factoring.